logistics.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it all.
Okay.
So get ready because we're already recording, my friend.
Okay, sounds good.
Hey, welcome everybody to Sustainiacs. I am Mike Vincent. I'm a Sustainiac. Sara Samuelson is my new guest. She is also a Sustainiac that she's over in the Carolinas too. And you're also CEO at SSD-Designs Incorporated,
Yes.
or LLC. Sorry, right?
LLC. You can call it whatever you want.
Incorporated, it doesn't matter. Just give her a call if you want to talk about sustainability. And what I have learned is call her if you want to hear what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Is one of those things, which is fantastic. That's why I love it. Because anyways, welcome to the show. We'll get into all that kind of stuff. Sarah, it's great to have you, man. How are you?
Thank you. Appreciate being here. And I appreciate you putting me on the show today. So I'm excited to get down to some nitty gritty stuff.
I am too. I'm excited to see and a little nervous as to what, because when I invited you, you said, "Are you sure?" I mean, I think that's pretty much your exact. Have you seen my other podcast? Are you sure you want to deal with this?
Some people are very censored in the world, and that's not me.
No, and I mean the point of this whole show is to strip away the censored crap, the BS, the hype, and get down to the nitty gritty from the people who have been in the industry, know the industry, and understand what the issues are and what the issues aren't. Because we all know there are times, and this is going to be a shock to you, Sarah, but people will actually exploit an issue and make it bigger than it needs to be in order to make money. I don't know. Yeah.
Impossible.
And influence people.
You mean people want to make money? Why?
And sometimes, which I'm not against making money. I'm just saying, you know what I'm saying. The issues, especially sustainability stuff, the people who cry, it's a scam. It's a this. It's 100%. There, I could point to a ton of different things in sustainability
and
stuff that are
sustainability isn't even like a legitimized piece of documentation. I literally looked this up the other day, and there is no formal definition of sustainability that is consistent. There's no continuity.
Well, that's part of the problem, right? Of why we can't get together and do something about what are the obvious issues, because we paint these broad strokes over it, and then we get to argue over what it means, and people go, "That's a fraud," and you're like, "Yeah, it is, but this other part isn't," and then the whole thing falls apart. Right?
Motivated perception. I think the language that we use in words is so bad. We have this false narrative towards things like end of life, single use. Even the word biodegradable, landfill, waste to energy, you name it, all these words are excuses for what? Bad management. That's all it is. These are all great words to bad manage what you do.
And it's like a whole new dictionary of corporate buzzwords that were completely BS throughout the 90s, 80s, 10s.
Exactly. Right? Like, you want to push that? We're going to call it this, because then that's going to make people feel better.
Sure. Let's call it TQM.
That's right. I mean, like, for example, biodegradable. I want to touch on this subject really quick. I know that we're kind of getting right into it, but
it doesn't matter. I mean, we just hop all over the place. Who cares?
The word biodegradable really irks me on so many levels, because I really want to understand biodegradable products better.
Yeah.
But I want to talk about something like visual imaging for a minute. Imagine you killed a dog by accident on the road. Terrible visual image, right?
Yeah.
Within a week, Mother Nature will have cleaned that up. It'll be gone. You'll never know it existed.
That's 100% true. Yeah.
But in biodegradable products, we hold that to a different standard. We're asking it to biodegrade within 6 months. 6 months, you got to look at that awful situation on your road. That's a
and isn't it the other? And isn't there more to that than just the 6 months of looking at that awful thing on a? It's not like when we create biodegradable stuff, like we're ensuring that it's going to be consumed and actually good for the environment either. Right? It's just you won't recognize it in its original.
And it's an excuse to throw it away. It's an excuse for you to throw it away. I don't want to deal with this. It's going to go away. I don't have to think about it anymore. So that makes us feel better.
So we can continue on with the throwaway, extract, use, and toss. You can keep being
gluttonous and destroy whatever you want to, because it's going to biodegrade in 6 months from now and produce 80 times more methane production than CO2. But guess what? We have a solution for that too, because now we can actually go out there and we can collect that methane and use it for energy. So there's your excuse to keep throwing it away, and who cares?
Yeah,
right?
yeah. We'll just put a
You know,
big cone of silence on top of the landfill and suck all the methane out.
exactly.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
so
It'll be
sad
great.
to me. The
It'll be great.
language we use, the verbiage that we use, this end of life concept, it doesn't exist in nature. Nothing in nature exists in a finishing point. In fact, there's no mathematical point that ends. Why in the heck do humans have ending points for anything? Why are we the
Well,
only
yeah, yeah.
species that
What
can do that?
it really is, and you've opened up a whole door to. We could just get into all kinds of philosophical discussions about linear logic and circular logic, and right, and
Exactly. But
Nada
circular logic is
Brahma and
the only
Zen
thing that
Buddhism and all kinds of
exists.
stuff.
There's no linear logic. There's nothing in nature that is linear. Everything is circular. Everything, and
It
everything is.
absolutely is, and I contend that if we keep thinking in linear logic, we've got ourselves into this road. But that it keeps us. It presents stumbling blocks because you have to figure out how to get to D, but you got to go A, B, C, D instead of going A to D. And we need to think of A to D instead of A, and then okay, we got to
We
get
need
through
to
B and C.
design
Well,
products
screw
with
B
the
and C.
idea of what happens next to that product. Not thinking about what you're doing now. We have to think beyond now to next and then next and then next. I mean, we're making a manufactured product right now. I refuse to put product in it that makes it look better. I'd rather design a better product around it if it doesn't look good enough.
So
You know,
that's an interesting concept because I've talked to many people who say the future of manufacturing, and you can talk about anything. I mean, construction is manufacturing. Okay, it is. Your manufacturing structures is to design with the extracted materials we already have,
yes,
right, and
that would
not
be wonderful.
design a new extracted material to then build this new product. Right?
Yep.
It's the other way. It's got to change. I think it was the people at Urban Machine. If you're not familiar with them on the West Coast.
No,
They have robotics that reclaim lumber from deconstruction.
love that.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
We
It's
can totally use that in
super
tens of
cool stuff.
thousands of other applications.
Oh, it's super cool stuff.
We
They
should
put
be
this
calling that.
lumber through that they pull out of a building, and these little arms come out and they pull out the screws, and they pull out the nail and all. It's super cool.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Love
yeah,
it.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, that's the technology we need. But it's not just designing it for the next thing. One of the things that I see happening for people who are actually doing that is that they're like, oh, well, ocean plastics, this example. They'll pull it out of the ocean and then they'll say, I'm going to stuff it in here because this is the only place that it fits, right?
Yeah.
And then it's never going to go into anything else because they're going to add compatibilizers, they're going to add all these other things. And I'm like, we're not thinking about what happens after you made it into something. What happens? What
Yeah, that's
happens
not
after
the
that?
end.
That's not the end of that. I know you think it's the end, but you like just scratch the surface.
All you've done, you've kicked the can down the road a little bit. That's
Right.
it.
And
That's all you've done.
that linear thought process, like you're talking about, is exactly the problem that we have with the human species, is that we end up continuing to think only of the now, not the next now, and the next now after that. If we start thinking about going back to that dog, which is I know it's so provocative to think of something like that because it's something
Can we
that
call it
matters to
a
us.
possum or something? There's
We
less
can
people
call
who
it a
haven't.
possum. It makes you
Okay.
feel better, but I wanted it to matter. That's why I called it a dog.
It does
Because
matter. You're absolutely right.
it
Yeah.
needs to matter. It mattered at the moment that before it was hurt and destroyed, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
mattered. And now it doesn't matter because now it's gone, whatever it was. And then what we do next with it is the problem. We're like,
Yeah.
let's just let it sit there for a long time. Let's just not have it ever die. Let's just let it not ever have something happen next to it. That's the idea behind it. But that's not reality. Reality is it's going to go and to be made into something new. And over again, it's going to re-nourish. If we think of our dog, instead of this being horrible event, we say it's nourishing, other species like scavengers, such as vultures and other creatures out there we don't like because we're not connected to them like a possum, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's doing something good next,
Well, and you bring up a great
And
point because there's a company. I don't know if you ever heard of Natural Fiber Weldings, but Luke Haverhall's founded it, and he's a PhD chemist from Purdue, I believe it's Purdue. But anyways, he left his chemistry and started this because of dealing with entropy, and you can't undo entropy. But if you study nature, nature is the ultimate circularity, and that's what you're talking about.
yeah,
That dog, that possum, that deer, that squirrel, whatever it was that was killed on the road, even if it was a person, was designed to be circular.
Exactly. And that's the idea. We have to see our products, our design of products, our methodology of sustainability. We have to see these things as circular and everything that we're doing as circular. It can't be, I loved it and now I don't love it and it's sad because it's over and I don't want to look at it for 6 months. It has to be, I loved it. Now it's going to get loved again. It's going to
Yeah.
be needed again. It's going to
Yep.
be appreciated again. It's going to be reused again. This is why I'm not a proponent of waste to energy. Waste to energy is really a failed attempt to recover.
Yeah.
If we think
Yeah.
about waste to energy on that bigger level, we're saying, well, it's only good for one thing. It was only good for one thing. It no
Yeah.
longer applies to anything else. And we think about how much it costs the world to make fossil fuels, how valuable those fossil fuels are. Instead, we are so wasteful with them that we don't really care what happens next to them because they're no longer our dog anymore, or our possum, or our deer, or whatever else. It's now somebody else's problem, or not even a problem. It just needs to go away. We just don't want to see it on the street anymore.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and that methodology of how we perceive sustainability is what, in my mind, has to change, because it isn't about materials. It's not about, I'm not against biodegradable products. I'm not against synthetic products. I'm not against energy resources used in lots of different ways. I'm not against any of those. I'm not an absolutist. I believe that we need to see all these things under a balanced perspective. Where can they be applied best? How can they be reapplied next, each and every time? And furthermore, how can we as a society take advantage of infrastructure that already exists? You know?
Yeah, but so I 100% agree with you, but let me just argue this. Now you're requiring people to actually give a shit.
No, I'm not. I don't
No?
care if
Okay,
people
because
give
it
a shit
sounds
or
like
not.
but you're talking
I
about, I
don't
mean,
care if people care. I think
yeah,
we need to work with the infrastructure that already exists right now. The infrastructure we use right now, we throw everything away. It goes into a landfill. I'm saying, let's stop it right there. Let's stop it when it goes somewhere. And let's use tech. Let's use intelligence. Let's use, infrastructure, physical infrastructure to do what people are already doing in smarter ways. We need to be smarter as an industry. And I'm not talking about a specific industry. I'm saying all industries need to
mm.
contribute to the contributions that they manufacture into making and renewing those resources, because that benefits them.
Well,
It
that's what I'm saying,
benefits
because they don't see it as benefiting them in the way that they have produced, or for the reasons that they are in business, which has sadly become just to extract wealth. Period.
Yeah. Well, how are you
In
going to extract
many
wealth if you
instances,
don't
and
have
that's what I
anything
mean.
to
You have to
manufacture in
rethink.
the future?
Well,
If you
I understand that, but I mean, they're looking at it like, okay, well, in 200 years we'll figure something out. Right now, it's this, and they're not investing in that long of a future and looking at it, right?
Right. I
And
agree.
that's what I mean by that. That mentality
You're
has to
right. No,
kind of
you're
change.
right. But
Yeah,
I'm saying that the everyday consumer doesn't
yeah,
need to change what they're doing every day to make these concepts possible.
right, right.
The,
Okay,
the
yeah, okay. Now that
industries
makes sense. That makes perfect
the
sense. So,
industries have to make this possible because it matters to them sustainability wise, because
yeah,
they have an end of a road. See, I think EVs have gained traction over the years, not because they're more sustainable than other products like
mm,
hydrogen power cars, because let's get real, hydrogen power cars have 35,000 times more energy density than an EV car does for a lithium ion battery car. But
mm.
you have to use fossil fuels to be able to manufacture the EV equivalent of the hydrogen car to begin with, to be able to generate those batteries. So I think a long time ago, somebody figured out that if we don't stop with this dependency that we have on fossil fuels, we're really screwed in the future, because
Hmm.
there is no replacement and there's no synthetic remaking of it and there's no sustainable future for it. So we were
Mm.
like, all right, what else can we do? And I think EV cars really became kind of a big thing as a result of like, okay, we don't require any fossil fuels to make them, which is actually not true. I mean, because we make
No,
batteries.
not in their present form at
Right,
all. I mean, there's plenty of
right.
other parts to that vehicle that have require petroleum,
A hundred
for sure.
percent.
Yeah.
100%, but they keep looking for new ways to make biodegradable plastics that work in similar ways as synthetic plastics do.
Absolutely. Yep.
But the problem that we have as an industry is that this continuity of messaging is not there. We don't have continuity of communication. So whoever came up with the idea of, hey, we need to stick away from hydrogen power because it uses fossil fuels, or EVs are somehow going to be able to be replaced entirely by fossil fuels. This
Hmm.
idea isn't continuity within the industry. Somebody came up with it, somebody discussed it, everybody else catched on to it. I want a clean environment, I want a good environment, we all care, right? Like, most of us don't want a slobby, horrible, polluted environment to live in. I don't care who you are. You're not
Yeah,
going to
but
be okay with
a lot of it is driven by I guess subconscious NIMBYs. In other words, they're not in my backyard type of people, but they don't even know that they are. They don't realize that the global south has been our trash can for hundreds of years.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying? Because they don't see it, right?
yeah,
And therefore they don't know it. Somebody else comes and picks it up and takes it away. Therefore, it's not an issue, right?
right.
But if
Well,
it
and
was
that's
an issue in their backyard, then it would be an issue.
that's exactly why I say let's work with the existing infrastructure that's there.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah, yeah.
we capitalized on what humans are already doing right now, and they're already throwing things away, let's educate. First of all, we need education all the way down the line. We got to start when they're young. We have to start teaching them about resource management and valuing resource management, explaining what happens next to a product and how they can work within those means. And then moving forward down the line, continuing to do that as they get older, thinking about design, development, engineering, technology, expansive technology. All of these things can happen if we start young and we work our way through the educational sector. By the time that group gets out of high school that starts now, they're going to already have careers and choices that are passionate about fixing existing infrastructure problems. But we have to start with what already exists. And that means everything that's going to a landfill now, it just doesn't go to a landfill, it goes to a resource recovery center. And
Yeah, which
that
is a
to me
great
is,
concept. Do you want to jump into that right now, or you want to talk about your SSD design, or you want to talk about your
I
book,
mean,
or
that is totally up to you. This is your podcast. It's whatever you want to go to. I told you we'd end up diverting, jumping around, bouncing back and forth, and
be all
might be
over the
interesting or
dark
it might be a
place?
little bit ADD for people where they've got whiplash. Sorry in advance.
Sorry in advance. Yeah, exactly. This if you have seizures, don't look at the light.
Yeah, no medication required. But you might want to
Exactly.
grab that Red Bull.
You might want to grab it because who knows what the heck's going to happen. No, it's fantastic. Let's talk about that because you started out on that topic is and I agree with you 100%. And there's those that do agree with you, even though they don't know it yet. As we keep talking about this, I mean, well, seriously, because
I love your vote of confidence that we're going to get all this support. It's amazing.
every single person out there listening right now that's going, this is BS, is about to agree with you.
You're going to change your mind. You just
We're
hang
gonna
on tight
change your
now.
mind. No, I mean, seriously, because everybody has their own views of what's going on. When they hear something slightly different, they go, no, it's not right. It's got to be this way. It's got to be that way. Until they hear a person completely out, right?
Yeah,
The infrastructure now is broken, and
so
there are
true.
hundreds out there that say, forget it. She's crazy. We can't use the infrastructure that's already out there and make this stuff happen and blah, 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 because it's a disaster. It doesn't work. And I'd be the first to say, I argued that the first time I met you, and you proved me mostly wrong. Right?
Nobody's ever completely wrong. So I'll give
Well, I had to give a shout out to Miracle Max and the Princess Bride. That's one of the great movies.
you. Yeah,
It's only
totally.
mostly did, right?
Totally. That's a good one. I'll have to remember that next time.
but let's talk about that because even like the recycling partnership is out there. You're familiar with Keith Harrison and the work that they're trying to do and get done, which is fantastic with their their motivations, etc. And she will say the very first thing is giving people the ability to do it. And one of the things that you're saying is it's there.
Yeah.
We just need to change the process once it gets through there, right? Because the people
Exactly.
are already doing what they need to do. They don't have to change. It's
Right.
what we
And they
do
will
with it.
change eventually. Like we will
Correct.
eventually integrate a new demographic of people, but that systemic change doesn't have to happen quickly for us to make this dramatic change on a core level.
Please
That's the
expand.
part. Yes. Okay. So a couple of years ago, before I started my plant, I started to get really frustrated with my industry. I'm in the plastics industry.
Hmm.
And I was very frustrated because we got a lot of people who wanted to say they wanted to make changes, and not a lot of people who were willing to back that up with any kind of financial resources to do that. It was all, I'm going to just say, fluff. And
Yeah. Okay.
that's when I decided to go all kind of on my own. I kept telling people you can be both purposeful and profitable. And I know
Mm.
that is really hard to conceptually understand as a business person, because in some ways there is a conflict of interest to have an ethical agenda, and also be profitable, because sometimes they're in conflict.
Yet that used to be a requirement in order to become incorporated, even in even in this country, right? You
I
had to
don't,
have.
I don't know if that was a requirement. I am not on board with
No,
that.
it was. You had when it first started. You had to have purpose to your. You couldn't just start a company to be an extraction of wealth.
Okay, well, I mean, I'm glad that they had values like that. I've never known a company to follow values like that, ever.
No, well, not
They
in our
call those
lifetime.
nonprofit organizations, but even in those situations, nonprofit organizations, have an agenda that they're pushing money towards, right? So I don't see why it has to be so segregated to begin with. That was my core belief system.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe I just thought differently than other people did, but it didn't seem like it was a hard ask to get recycling companies, which I was involved with, to report to manufacturers what they're doing wrong to help them. When that wasn't happening, despite my many attempts to try to make that happen, and I got told by bosses that, if you continue to report this to them, we're going to lose the business because they don't want to know their problems. And I thought to
Mm.
myself, wow, like I can't believe these people don't want to make a change. It wasn't that they didn't want to make a change, it was that they didn't want to be pointed out as doing something wrong. But we're always doing something wrong. Like literally, as a parent, as a human being, we're making mistakes constantly. And we have to look at those issues like more linear, in that they're going to continue to happen. And we need to solve them abstractly by saying, how can we look at this problem in a more um, metaphorical way? We're going to make problems. Now, how do we fix them?
Are you trying to
So
tell me that we should own up to our faults and learn from them?
I know it's hard, but
That's
it
weird.
is responsible parenting, but it's also just responsible human management.
You know what?
You
It's so funny because I'm 100% certain that everybody out there saw that as a lesson in one or more Sesame Street shows when they were a little kid, and yet they can't figure that out as a businessman.
I mean, maybe I paid more attention to my mom. Maybe my mom put me in Sesame Street more often, so I don't know. Anyway, so I was really involved in sciences growing up. My dad was very involved in the military. My mom was worked for NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and my grandfather helped to build quadritrack systems for Jeeps. So I had a lot of really young exposure to sciences and engineering, and really just understanding like problem solving situations. So I fell in love with that very early on. And then I also have a chemistry background. So I went to school to be a forensic scientist because, again, I love solving problems, especially ones that aren't so obvious. But this one was obvious to me. The obvious problem was we're going to continue to manufacture and make mistakes. That's part of life, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And how can we solve that problem? So I started looking at the EPA, how and what was being reported, what was actually going into a landfill, how much of that product was something that could be solved chemically, and how much of that product couldn't be solved chemically. And I was astonished to see that 65 to 70% of what was going to landfill was organic matter that should be broken down in a biological form. That's why there's such methane producing houses, because when biological matter breaks down very, very slowly through chemical interactions with, biology like worms and bacteria, we
Mm.
produce methane. And methane is 80 times more pollutant than CO2 emissions is. It's pretty astonishing how much more pollutant it is. But I was like, well, what if we didn't have to go through that
Well,
process at all?
as a greenhouse gas,
As a
right?
greenhouse gas.
As it
Yes,
right, yeah.
as a greenhouse gas.
As a warming agent, it's 80 times worse. Yeah.
Right. And we think about when we look at our math too, like, because I'm such a math geek, I love looking at problems mathematically. I was like, okay, um, we're we're looking at this problem the wrong way. We're trying to pull out 12% of plastics, and plastics are the bad guy going into landfills, polluting everywhere, but we're producing significantly higher, more copious amounts of food, of cardboard, of paper, of all these like more biological products that should be breaking down terrestrially at faster paces than they are right now. And going back to that original roadkill situation, we're not at the same speed. It's taking us 3 months to 6 months for those biological items to start breaking down. That's if they're in the right conditions. If they're not in
Mm.
the right conditions, it can take years for these products to break down, right? Whilst at the same time producing and leaching methane everywhere.
Well, and it can
So,
produce all kinds of other issues as well. I mean, because there's been reports recently, and I'm sure they're only reported recently. There have been problems that have been going on for years.
yeah,
There's
sure.
several in the LA County or Los Angeles area, Orange County, LA County areas over there where there's underground, basically smoldering fires that are bleaching toxic chemicals
Yeah.
into the
And,
air, et cetera, right?
there's so many other
Because the environment
chemicals.
wasn't correct for those things that should
Yes,
have broken down, right?
exactly. Nitrous. I mean, I can like list 15,000 chemicals that are being produced as a result of this breakdown process that isn't happening naturally,
I
because it should be
gotcha.
gone in a week, right? If it was like
Right,
the natural environment, it'd be gone in a week. We have
right.
biological systems designed to break things down quickly, short term, not
Mm,
long
mm.
term. Nothing that we have in real life is designed to break down at the speed and the scale that we are producing things, and at the speed and the scale that it is taking to break down. So to me, this was a very clear math problem that said, how do we speed up the scale? Right.
Gotcha. That's
So,
interesting. That's
you
very
know,
interesting look
and
at it. Yeah.
I went in and I said, all right, what options do we have out there? And I found all of these different tabletop composters, and I started looking at them, and I was like, I'm going to buy one and take it apart and see how it works. Because supposedly these things are going to compost product within hours instead of months.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was like, all right, let me try this out. So I bought one, brought it home, and then I had to know, so I took it apart. I was like, how does this thing work exactly? and and I put it back together again, and I was like, this is an easy solve. Like, this is all thermodynamics. This is all about friction and thermodynamics. This was not a complicated problem. And I knew that the technology out there existed where we can remove 65 to 70% easily of what is going into landfills. And now we have other materials that we can sort and separate out through what you mentioned earlier, things like robotics, right?
Yeah.
AI, other thermodynamic systems that are out there. I
But
was
you're
like,
saying
oh,
that process that we're trying to apply at the front end really is the back end cleanup process.
exactly. Yeah,
Gotcha. So we've just got it
got it.
reversed, basically,
You
is what
we
you're
just
saying.
we didn't look at nature in a linear way and then also solve the problem abstractly. It takes two thoughts of thinking, and this is why I think it's been so hard for our great scientists and industries to understand, because it's not the same thought process. It's
Mm.
what is happening and how can we create that or mimic that, but in a way that has the same scale and speed that we would do in the natural environment.
So you're talking about a
Yeah,
guy going up or gal going up to a stream in Northern California several hundred years ago with a pan and and taking some sort of sifting and letting the stuff sift through, and then pick out the nugget of gold instead of picking up the whole thing and trying to take the golden stuff out first.
exactly.
It's very complicated, Sarah.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this isn't that hard though. I mean, this
Okay.
is totally math based.
Yeah.
And if you're taking out 70% of your problem material and you're collecting, guess what happens with most biological matter? Most of us, what's the vast majority of our bodies made out of?
Oh, me.
Okay,
Water.
go.
Water.
Water. So, what are we now producing? We are now producing a clean water supply as a result of thermodynamically breaking down at an accelerated speed level the biological matter that is going into these applications. So now we
Yeah.
have a water producing phenomenal source that, and even if we burnt it all, the biological matter, even if we burn all of our biological matter, we would still have calcium, phosphorus, potassium. We would still have these excellent nutrients that could then go back into and use as fertilizer at a scale that makes so much
Yeah,
sense.
if you do it correctly, the char is actually incredibly valuable to nature and a
Exactly.
positive impact. But so to be clear, about 70% of 80% of everything that we throw away is water. Is that right? Am I
I
getting that
mean,
math
it does
kind of? Is
sound
it pretty
simpler to
close?
the math that I've come up with. Yes.
That's pretty close, right?
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
And we need water. Guess what? We need
Yeah.
water and we need clean water.
And if we
So
do it right,
imagine
the water can be clean and not this nasty
that's
toxic
right.
leachate that's coming
That's
out
right.
of landfills at the current moment that we're trying to contain.
And we can separate and we can still use methane. There's no reason why we can't still use methane as an energy source if we wanted to. Like, I don't depose that technology.
Yeah, but
I
if
think
you
that's
change
wonderful.
it to the correct way, there's less methane coming out of it to have to
Exactly. Not
utilize,
only do you
right?
have less risk of leakage, which is so dangerous for the ozone and the atmosphere, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But you also have the opportunity to be able to use whatever is produced as a source of energy.
Well, even
And
the
my
water, you could
plan,
use the water through electrolysis and produce hydrogen and then just keep that cycle going, right?
totally. I mean, you could even potentially use it to help to generate power within your facility.
That's
You
what I'm
could be
saying. I mean, you could have a
efficient.
power, yeah, your facility with the water you're saving, hydrogen electrolysis, solar, a few solar panels here and there, and bada boom, you've got a,
Exactly.
yeah, to
It's
coin a
not, I mean,
phrase.
this isn't rocket science, not in my opinion. This is straight, chemical engineering. And
So how do you do this? This is all great talk, right? So walk me through what do we do here? How does this happen? How does the current infrastructure is me just throw everything in a garbage can, which is what I believe you're implying. It's just put it in a
mhm,
garbage can. Truck comes and grabs it. It doesn't matter if it's number
whatever it
one
is, it
with or
goes in
without
it.
a label. I
I
don't
mean, we
need to
would like
rinse out.
people not to put hazardous things in there because that's just going to cause more problems. But yes, you know,
Yeah. Okay, yeah, okay. Keep your motor oil bottles and your paint and that stuff up. Everything else, throw it in there. You don't have to take the caps off or the labels off or do any of that kind of junk. You don't have to
none of that.
separate cardboard
People
or
are
anything
doing it
from
anyway.
food.
You might as well stick with the same program, right?
Yeah, right. You could if you want to, or just
Have you
if
ever
you're
done
not.
martial arts? Okay, so what does martial arts teach
Why
you?
did you
Number
pick
one
up on
rule.
my mad skills while I was talking?
No, but what is martial arts' number one rule?
um, always look a eye.
No, go with flow of energy. Go with
Yeah, that's
flow
right.
of energy.
Yes, the flow of energy.
So we want to go with the same flow of energy that exists now. So
Gotcha.
why change what is already happening? It's already being infrastructure all over the world,
Right.
you know?
Okay,
And
so everybody's throwing this stuff away. We're following the flow of it. So now
well,
what
not
happens?
throwing it away. We don't like that word.
All right,
Let's
right.
keep the
We're
word.
presenting it for I don't know, whatever you want to talk.
Everybody is
It's entering
resource
into
management.
the stream. We're putting
Everyone
it
is
into the stream.
collecting resources.
Okay, we're collecting resources and
Mhm.
putting them in the bin for the resource collection truck to come by.
You got it. That's
Okay,
right.
there you go.
Yeah.
So now what happens?
So now it goes in and it is going to go through a series of technological um, identification systems that help to ensure that whatever goes into it next, which will be a nice little soupy mix of things, is not going to have some chemical explosion of any kind. So,
Mm.
the airport technology that's out there that can identify
Hmm.
biological hazards, that can identify other consistently problematic things that don't go on planes anymore that get stopped. There's first, everything will go through a system like that. It has to, in order for AI and robotics to help assist this product to making it to the next level. Then anything that's really like hazardous is going to be stopped, pulled out, and moved so that things can keep going down the conveyor line.
So
Everything will get dropped.
these are technologies that already exist.
Exactly. I'm not asking to
They're
reinvent the
just
wheel.
used in
Yeah.
they're just
Use in different
they're
applications.
disparate. They're used in all different areas because everybody's trying to solve
Right.
this little part and that little part and this little part. And what you're saying is let's solve all the little parts in one place.
Doesn't that make sense?
A little bit, yeah.
I mean, this does require some collaborative work. I'm not going to cherry coat that piece of it. After it goes down the line and it gets dumped in, anything that's potentially hazardous got pulled out. It would then get dropped into a soupy mix, which then gets agitated and is thermodynamically adjusted. It is
Heat.
adjusted.
You're talking about heat.
That is what I'm talking about, heat,
I
but
got it.
not just heat, but that's okay. We'll leave it at that. At that point, all of the separations will begin to occur. Biological matter, fortunately, does separate at different levels than synthetic matters do. And we're really lucky that that is the case because there are very few cross level contaminants that are at different melt points. We are simply taking existing technology already exists out there, and I can't name names, but there's already tech out there that separates via melting point. So we're going to
Like
begin
wave melting technology. I mean, there's been like I used to have like Alpha Fry Medicals was one of them. I don't know if they still exist or not, but they took motherboards, et cetera, and we're talking about the mid '90s. They were already doing it through wave melts to melt the different precious metals within the to extract them at different points of the line. That's what you're
exactly.
talking.
Now you're getting where I'm going with this. So
Yeah.
at this point, we will then have the soupy matter that gets separated via those melt points and
Hmm.
extracted. Some materials will become gases. Those gases will be extracted, contained, and managed, in
Hmm.
appropriate formats. The liquid portion that maintains the solid biosolids will then go down into other categories, which will then be agitated and desiccated further to be able to be made up into a soil based product, which will then be sold to all over the world. Why not? Any microplastics or other plastics will then be captured via additives and other things that help to bind and protect. And I just did a posting on this
You
today. I
did.
sent it to you
You
on this
did.
about the different kinds of additives that can bind microplastics together. So we're not pushing plastics out into the market anymore. Then those microplastics will then make it their way through their thermodynamic adjustments so that they can be separated from each other and then resourced and collected as well.
So you're not talking
So
about like putting it through float tanks and all that other kind of stuff. You're using thermodynamics to separate,
everything.
right,
Yep.
everything that's
But
out
we
there
aren't going to
to a
dispute that.
specific degree, right? I mean,
We're
you're not
also going to
claiming to
separate
solve.
things mechanically as well. And
Yeah.
not everything is going to need to go through a process of thermodynamic separation. It's mostly the biological matter because it gets starts to degrade at such lower
Right.
temperatures.
Well, wouldn't it be only those that don't have a higher thermal tolerance than the bio that have to be separated by the same process as the bio? In other words, if it's not impacted until a higher degree, it can be mechanically done fairly easy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And we really don't want to break down because I'm in the plastics industry and I understand cross contaminations. We really
Yeah.
don't want to have to break them down thermodynamically. We want to be able to sort and separate them through IR detection and
Yeah.
even, melt identification, which that
Sure.
technology is out there right now. This is not
Yeah. You don't want to
foreign
melt PVC
ideas.
unless you
We
have to.
can sort and separate different materials from different materials within the same family through melt identification. So imagine if you, as a let's say polypropylene buyer, got a 25 melt, to use that is natural based because this system did all of that sort and separating for you. That tech is out there. It's not a
Yeah,
foreign
I mean,
object.
you're so we're not breaking down polymers back to their original oils and forms and all that
No,
kind
and
of
we
stuff.
would never
We're
want
not
to do
talking
that.
about solving for entropy or anything like that.
No.
We're this is I got you. That
Mechanical.
makes
This
sense.
is
Yeah,
mechanical. And
yeah.
it's mechanical because if you look at the CO2 emissions, you look at the output and the recovery on it, we are getting a far better recovery on it as a mechanical product than we ever would as a chemical breakdown product. you
So
know.
then those plastics could then go through whatever process they need to from there, right? I
Right,
mean,
and we
the
can make them into, like, a
separation
nice,
through.
beautiful regrind that goes out to your customer, we'll sell it to be a money-making machine because it's gonna be a resource factory,
Well,
and
you're
it's just
grabbing
gonna.
you're grabbing clean water, you're grabbing methane, you're grabbing all these other materials, anything that's in it. Because there's people out there that argue, and rightly so, that landfills are potentially the mines of the future, and there's actually people
Yeah,
out
I've
there
argued that
and
point.
organizations buying up those old kept landfills because they eventually will mine those.
Yeah, I agree.
And the older they are, the more rich they are with all kinds of stuff that you can get out. They're
Gold,
also,
palladium, platinum, you
yeah.
name it. I
Can you
mean,
imagine? Phew.
it's huge. It's a
Yeah.
huge financial profit center. That's the part that's so hard for me to understand why industries can't see value in it, because I'm like, the billions of dollars you're going to recover in just a few years from the amount of money that you're going to be able to collect as part of your resource management center. I mean, it's worth every penny you're going to put into it and then some,
So
you know?
fairly decent size regional processing, um, uh, res- uh, what'd you call it? Resource processing plants,
Resource recovery center.
resource recovery centers, right? Regional type of thing. Because it would be, I mean, for the volume that's going through it, the space you need is fairly decent, right? I mean, this
Yeah,
is not going
my
to, yeah,
my space requirements are about a mile and a half by 3 miles, which is a pretty large space, but it would
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
would be able to process 2.8 billion, tons in a year, which is pretty substantial volume.
How big is that for a population? Do you know that figure?
It would cover, depending on the regional population amount,
Yeah, sure, sure.
you
But
know,
so you're in North Carolina. So what
it
is
would
like?
cover all of North Carolina's
It would.
capacity.
Okay, so you're going to be able to handle like a Charlotte and some other
You
fairly
would be able to
decent
handle the
size.
entire
Yeah,
region. You'd be able
yeah,
to
yeah,
handle
yeah.
the entire state.
That's what I'm saying. So a state could run, and arguably in other areas more than a state. Well, maybe
Or
not. I
less
mean,
than a state, depending on the location.
yeah, right. Because the smaller states actually have more population the further northeast you go, and then you go out west, and it's like okay, but
Right, right,
you get a
exactly. California is
yeah.
going to probably need multiples of these centers.
Yeah.
This math issue is so
But that's
simple.
nothing. 3 miles by a mile is not a
I,
lot of
I
land.
know, I know, and I think it can all be run on clean energy. I put those in quotes because I just think that that term "clean energy" is so weird to me to begin with.
Yeah.
What does that mean, clean energy? Like, everything is energy. Energy is energy. Where it comes from, the pollutants that it put out. You can say a not as polluting air quality product. Okay, that's more accurate. You know,
Less polluting energy is accurate.
there you go. That's a
Clean
more accurate
clean
statement.
energy is not. I mean, like look. I
It's
mean, here you
misleading.
go. Just reading it today in what is this? RTE.I Brainstorm, right? Is one of the geek publications. I belong to all kinds of geek public. I am a geek just like you. And I mean, they're trying to figure out what to do with 11,000 tons of turbine blades.
Gee, I wonder. I mean, they could certainly find an application at the Resource Recovery Center.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, this is. I was going to do and talk about. This. This is the perfect example of knowledge and intelligence, and our knowledge skis are just flying down this hill.
Yeah.
Our intelligence is so far behind. We're just like this flying X. If you've ever gone snow skiing, that
Yeah, no,
we
you're
where
right.
you
I
see
mean,
somebody coming down like this, you need to hide because they ain't stopping. They hitting something, and that's kind
yeah.
of like we are. Oh, let's do all this wind turbines. It's clean energy. Oh, wait a minute.
What
We've
happens
got
when
a
we need to recycle it?
yeah,
What
because they
happens when they
they
don't
only
work?
last a year.
Oh,
These huge things they last a
it's
year.
amazing to me that the tech out there now, like I was saying about biodegradable, I have nothing against biodegradable products. Really, I don't. I think they're amazing.
Yeah,
I hope that we can find a substitute that lasts a long time and that does a good job and that is sustainable. But sustainable to me is being able to repeat the same thing over and over again at a scalable level. That's
yeah.
sustainable to me. If you can't do that, if you can't repeat it over and over again at a scalable level, then it's not sustainable. I don't care if it's environmental or
It
not
isn't. Yeah.
environmental. You can't do it. It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
You
And by
know?
the way, those 11,000 tons of blades, it's just Ireland.
Oh,
1 year.
wow. Wow.
And they,
That's you know what the
I
design
believe
on
Montana, it was
turbines,
either Montana.
I've come up
Go
with
ahead.
new design for turbines too, actually. I think they're very inefficient in the way they are. I mean, just you look at the physics of them, they're not really designed
But there's been
to
a couple
handle weather.
cool ones that have come out though.
Well, they
You know,
have
they've
started
got
to.
those they got those vibration poles now,
Why
right?
can't
Have you
they
seen
fold in
those?
on themselves? Or why can't they go faster? You know, like all of these technology options, like why can't they be more like a palm tree where they can move with the wind so they can
Just
take
do
advantage?
this. And when,
Exactly.
yeah,
Like we
if you
don't
look
think
up
about these
this,
things when we're designing these things. We're just like, oh, we're going to capture the energy, so we're going to make it sit like so straight, so nothing ever happens to it. This is what I mean about this linear way of thinking, right? You know, it's very,
but
this is
see,
the only.
when I look at this, I see this the issues that we have and the things like what you're talking about. There's these vast blue oceans of opportunity that we have in front of us now because of this realization of that our linear thinking is the wrong way. And we got to abruptly about face the and we do in terms of our existence on this earth and the universe. This
Right.
is a 180 turn, like instant, that we need to make.
And it has to be. It has to be. Like, I hate our narratives that we put out there. Listen, as a company owner, I have my employees not have trash cans. There's no compactors, no trash cans in our
You
plant.
told me about that when I thought you were nuts about that,
No,
but
I mean, listen, I wanted to teach people that we do what is easy. We do what is the flow of energy, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
if it's really hard to throw it away, how often do we throw it away? Not very often, because it's really hard. If it's
I
really
know people that have like probably 30, 40 paint cans in their garage right now because they don't know what to do with them.
exactly my point. The point of not having the trash cans wasn't about being green even. It was about teaching the way we think as a society, and the employees got really smart about recycling because recycling was convenient and available, and they couldn't get rid of things that had to go to landfill. And then when they had to go to the landfill, they felt bad because landfills suck and they don't like the way they look and they smell bad, and it's really about teaching this like mental thought process of like, why am I doing this if it's so awful? But
Well,
we've
it's a
made it so
great
easy.
experiment. It's a great
Right.
experiment.
It was a great experiment
We abuse our environment because of convenience.
because it's easy.
Because it's easy. Exactly. Because it's easy. And
Exactly.
yeah, and the innovations and the differences in cultures are there because of the variance of convenience and ease within those cultures, right? I mean, there's no, it's no, it isn't the mentality. When you think about things, the mentality of the European culture and the North American culture are different for very valid reasons, right? I mean,
Right.
you have to hold on to things longer in Europe. You have to be cognizant of the environment because you don't have Montana sitting out there with like 5 people in
Yeah.
it. You know what I mean?
No,
It's
you're
not there.
right. You're right. And I think it comes down to sustainability again. That word is such a hot topic for me right now because I get so passionate about the idea of scalability. Like what I'm doing at our plant, people aren't going to do at home.
Right.
you know they're not going to do it at home. I bring it to the attention of people, and when I go to schools, I give them a bag to have their kids carry around their waste for a day just so they can feel the burden of what they're carrying.
Oh,
you
wow.
know
That's an interesting
I
concept too.
think that is so important, that they conceptualize how much they're collecting and how often they're doing it, and not throw it away, because at the end of the day, when you have to carry this burden, it smells bad, it's in your face all the time, and it weighs something, it's heavy. Like you start looking at glass as a problem. You don't want to carry glass when you have to carry on your waist because it's
Mm.
heavy. And what do you think that's doing to the real world? Like, so we're applying these like very simple basic ideas into these physical experiences that kids and adults are having, that I get to interact with, which I'm super excited about. But I'm not going to change the whole world. I'm not stupid. I recognize I can't make this happen on every level with everybody. So I said, all right, how can I live with what is with everyone else? And then try
Mm.
to change the people who I get to interact with and try
Yeah.
to influence them to think bigger and think better and think beyond, right? But it does take those experiences, and that systemic change will be a long, long time coming. It won't be me, it'll be hundreds of millions of people who get educated in this way through our curriculum in the future, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's why I came up with the landfill diversion into resource recovery. I was like, well, how can I fix what is? You
Yeah.
know,
But it's is it when you think about it, we've had this discussion, um, because I'm very interested in what you're talking about there, and I think it is. There's obviously it makes all the sense in the world. It does. It's how you get there. Do you immediately build this, or are there ways to kind of prove out the steps to get there?
this is the
You,
hard part about where I'm at right
or
now.
do you
So
just have
I
to
have a
tear off the
job,
band-aid
right?
and just
Like
freaking do it?
I own a company, and I run 3 divisions within my company. We have a retail division, that we're making landfill diverted products on. We're manufacturing compounds, that are in polypropylene, and we're doing recycling. And then I do some consultative work, right? So
Hmm.
between all of those things that I'm spending time doing, it's really hard to find the time to do exclusively this activity because it will take a full-time job to do it. So, what we need to find is somebody who has the funding and the capability for me to be able to pass off what I'm doing now, so that I can spend time doing this. So, we're talking $15 million just to get the proof of concept up and off the ground, and then billions of dollars to build the first pilot. And that's hard because, as you pointed out earlier, the technology that's out there already exists. We're just not applying it in the right places. So we have to work with other industries. We have to work with other people. It's a full time career and job to do just this pilot. It's going
Yeah.
to take years. So
Yeah,
we
and
need
and the volume that has to go through it immediately is large. You can't do
huge.
this. You
You
can't
can't,
do this in like a. You can't prove the concept in a 10,000 square foot warehouse. It's
no,
not going to happen. No.
no. The proof of concept will come simply with the biological matter and breakdown of the
Mm,
biological matter. There
yeah.
isn't a way to do it on a larger scale because it takes so much space, physical space, to be able to do the sorting on a much grander scale to get all the materials separated. I mean, just like
Yeah.
take steel for a minute. Steel has to be in a non-humid area. It has to be in a place where it doesn't get any interaction with moisture. Otherwise, it could spark a fire and do all kinds of damage to the plant, right? So
Yeah.
it's going to have to be sorted in its own way, with its own space, with everything that's just all about steel, over in this little area over here. And then you got alloys in another area. Then you got paper in another area, which hopefully won't be there, because if we're doing our job right, it will be already in the biological, breakdown of soil.
Right.
But on the off chance that there's extra stuff that came out of the paper that needs to be separated.
Yeah.
And
There's all
then
those. Yeah.
dyes and glues and all kinds of other stuff that come with it, right? So again, going back to like, how do you get this up and off the ground? You get this up and off the ground by having people who want to invest in this and are willing to collaborate with lots of different people. This requires a lot of people. This cannot be that you pee on it and it makes you feel good at the end of the day.
Mm,
You got
mm.
money and you want to do something about it, that's fine, but you got to work with a lot of different industries, universities, you're going to have to work with bright minds, people who are willing to work with legal obstructions that make this difficult because somebody said, I'm using it in this area and you don't want to use it in that area. All this tech is going to be a challenge, and it's going to take a serious collaborative work. So is
Wow.
it possible? 100%. Is it viable? That depends. It depends on the people that are out there who are willing to make this happen. It cannot be a
Yeah.
one single company situation.
Yeah. This isn't pretend collaboration. This isn't pretend transparency. This
Right.
is the real thing.
This is going to
This
require
is.
all of us, you know? It's going to
Yeah.
require a full-time job. It's going to require more than a full-time job. Many of us are going to have to spend hours upon hours bringing brilliant minds together and collaborating this vision into reality. It's not impossible. It's
Yeah.
real and viable. And I have tested it and I've trialed little bits and pieces myself. And I can tell you that it can happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's all well, everything that you said. It's when you say put it all in one place that it gets crazy, and I don't. That I mean that it gets very complicated and difficult and costly to do is what I mean. Um, uh, because you're just imagining this building in the schematics, going. Whew, somebody's going to blow up a few CAD drawings over this thing, right?
I've already
Because
built
all of
it.
these things
I've
are
got
being done in different scales by
I've already built
themselves.
it. I've got the CAD drawings already. We've already got everything organized. So we're ready to roll whenever anybody actually wants to do this and doesn't just want to do like, I'm going to make a little bit of money and put money in the bank, because it is a money making, opposition that we're going to have to go through. Who's going to lose money that you're using their tech for and feel like they want to, make money on whatever you're doing? Like, see beyond what is just you. This isn't just you. This is
Yeah,
everyone. This is the
yeah,
future of humanity we're talking about.
yeah, yeah. It's a game changer if this were able to be done. And we're done efficiently the way you describe it. It would be a massive game changer of how we look at um, waste and how we. Well, I mean, obviously, you get it. I'm preaching to the choir.
And guess what? The American people, you guys can fund it. $5 from every American out of your paycheck every year gets one new facility.
Wow. Yeah.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
You know?
I love it. I love it. I love it. Is there a place where people can go and GoFundMe? Is this a GoFundMe
I
thing?
mean, I've never set up a GoFundMe before. You can set up a GoFundMe if you want, and if we get enough
GoFundMe
money,
goal is $15 billion.
actually, I'll give you the real stats. So we're looking roughly, and this again depends on geography and logistics and where it gets set up at. But we are looking at $15 million up front to be able to do the proof of concept. And then we are looking at a $4.9 billion ask for the pilot. The ROI on this, for any investor out there listening who actually does care and wants to see
Yeah,
this
please.
mission, you're looking at about 5 years, a little less than 5 years to get your ROI, because this is a resource management manufacturing facility. Imagine taking every industry you've ever thought of and ever been involved in and made it into a resource that you could capitalize on.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
what we're talking about here.
No, it's absolutely it's an amazing concept, and it ticks so many boxes, and it makes so much sense because you're not talking about creating cold fusion. These are real technologies that are all over there. You're just talking about a massive project to bring them all together
Yep.
to extract from a waste stream that would actually exist because it already does.
It's,
You're not, it's already there.
it's
And
not just already there.
and I challenge anybody in,
Infrastructure is already there. The
yeah.
technology is already there. The people are already, we're not even going to be including a lot of people. That's the funny thing about all of this, is that really the tech is mostly AI. It is
Oh yeah,
mostly
yeah.
programmers. It's mostly
Yeah.
robotics. So you're not going to be in a hazardous condition as a person getting involved in this. You're going to be a part of ensuring that we get continued upgrades. So as
Yeah.
you as an American or anywhere else in the world, you design something new, guess what? Our AI knows about it. And our
Well,
AI can now talk to our IR, excuse me, good Lord, I can't speak, and can talk to all of our other robotics that already knows that you made it and we figured it out. And we can sort it and separate it. It's not going to go to a landfill. It's going to be resourced, and it's going to go to whoever it goes to that it belongs to. And
I love
and
it.
you can even change it geographically to whatever the region wants. So we're talking logistics too. So let's say in a region you have a demand for, I'm just going to use plastics because that's easy for me, 10 to 30 mil polypropylene copolymer, and you get more
Sounds like
money out of that.
Chicago.
Yeah, you get more money out of that in this location. You can then sort and separate with your AI and your tech by that specific thing for your audience that needs that thing. And you can still separate in other ways too, that gets all of the materials.
Yeah.
But
But
you
you
can
want to make sure
customize
that's your
it.
main. Yeah, you can be
You can
customized.
customize it.
That's amazing. It's absolutely
By
true.
using AI. AI is amazing.
Yeah,
Why aren't
and
we using this?
the more agrarian regions of the U.S. could grab all the the bio waste,
Yep.
the bio.
You got
biological
it.
waste.
You got it. And then they can
That's
continue.
amazing.
It's all based on using tech that already exists. We're not reinventing the wheel, we're creating a new wheel that uses existing spokes.
I love it, Sarah. Maybe somebody's out there is gonna say, "Hey, Michael, get me in touch with Sarah and let's figure out how we're gonna
I
look at
hope
this."
so.
Well, I mean, because here's the thing: is if you're somebody who composts, this makes sense to you. Okay, if you're somebody who is trying to keep toxic chemicals out of the environment, this makes sense to you. If you are a plastics recycler, this makes sense to you. If you're somebody who cares about the environment in any way at all, this makes perfect sense to you. If you're somebody who doesn't give a rip about the environment, this makes sense to you because it
Yeah.
makes money and this stuff is already there. If
Yeah.
you're in manufacturing and you're just this total capitalist and you've got the white mustache and a monocle and a top hat and you're just out there, Mr. Moneybags and all that kind of stuff, the thing, this makes sense to you because you can make a ton of money off of it. So
Yeah.
why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
There,
So
there,
you're
I,
asking, why has nobody done this to begin with?
well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother 25 topics as to why things don't get right.
I mean, you're right.
We might offend one or two people talking about that too.
I mean, hey, I told you you should be careful what you ask for with me. You may not like it.
I haven't
That's
asked the
your-
question yet. But
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
this is fantastic stuff. We're over our hour, Sarah. And we'll talk more and more about this and other topics. I'm 100% sure because I'd love to pick your brain about other thoughts as we go through this
Sure.
and because meanwhile, while this dream is out there and this is out there and hopefully people are actually thinking about these things, there are a ton of other good smaller steps that are being made, right? I mean, you're doing it yourself at SSD-Design.
Yep. Yeah.
Right?
I mean, we're doing what we can,
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. There's still a lot of people out there doing good steps. They may not be the complete thing, but they're the right thing, right? They're making the right steps.
It has to be math based. This is my golden rule. Go with the flow of energy and do things based on mathematical calculations that really make sense. Don't just look at the front end, look at the back end, look at the whole picture, and understand that you already have a lot of the tools available to you to know what the right thing to do is, because all we have to do is look outside.
Fantastic.
We just look at whatever's going on out there, and I guarantee you're going to get some inspiration.
Yep. Absolutely. Wonderful stuff. We'll end it right there, Sarah. I really appreciate you being on the show. It's been fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you
It
for
really
having
has.
me.
I'm glad I ignored your warning because it was not, it was accurate, but I'm glad I ignored it anyway.
Sorry.
No. It's fantastic. Absolutely awesome. Everybody else, thank you so much for downloading, tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time. Peace and love.